We're coming on 6 o'clock. Council, everybody good and feeling ready? All right. Whoop, Deborah disappeared. I'll give Deborah a second to come back.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. With that, good evening. At 6 o'clock, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Frisco Town Council. Can I have the roll call, please?
Mortensen.
Here.
Aronson.
Here.
Held.
Here.
Early.
Here.
Fallon.
Here.
Incan.
Here.
Sherburne.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody making a special meeting this evening. Now I'd like to open up for public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment now, please state your name and address for the record, be topic specific, and limit comments to no longer than 3 minutes. You can raise your hand in the participant list. And looking at the participants, except for it looks like it's mostly staff and Sawyer. So seeing no public comment, I will close public comment at this time and move on to new business. And this is agenda item number 1. It's a resolution of the Town of Frisco, Colorado, reestablishing economic relief programs, directing the immediate implementation of the programs in the response to COVID-19 public health emergency, and authorizing the expenditures of funds for this program. I'll open the public hearing, turn it over to staff, and Nancy, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I also thank you all for having this special meeting. What's before you tonight is essentially this one item, but also the ratification of an agreement between the towns and the county. But we wrapped this up into one presentation. So Council, at our last meeting, a regular meeting, you discussed the possibility of reestablishing the Business Assistance Grant Program, laid out some parameters based on the conversation we heard you having at the meeting, and some of the conversation we've had at a couple previous meetings, and wanting to have a program, should you choose to reestablish one, that's very targeted to those that are greatest in need at this time. We know as a result of the pandemic, a lot of strange things have happened. And one of the more unexpected positive things that happened was this summer, a lot of our businesses did better than anticipated. And so we wanted a program based on your conversation that targeted those who continue to be in need. So what's before you is a program that a resolution that, should you choose to adopt it, would reestablish a business assistance program. And then I'm going to go through the criteria that we've laid out. Of course, all criteria, the funding, the amount of the funding, and all of that is at council's discretion, complete discretion, of course, and all of the criteria and implementation of the program. Also, I will add in a couple of potential additions that you might consider that have come up since I posted since we wrote the report. So, Business Assistance Program, as outlined in Table A on the resolution, overall the program is geared towards those businesses that have seen a significant decline in gross revenue. We did not get into net revenue. I know Council talked about that at one point, but it's got so many variants to it that we went with gross revenue. So as laid out in the table, either in the resolution or in the staff report, businesses that did not see a greater than 15% decline between January and November, so that's January 1st to November 30th, 2019 to 2020 as a comparative. Those who did not see a greater than 15% decline between the 2 years would not be eligible as proposed. Those between 16 and 20% decline, as proposed, would be $2,500 grant or 2 times their rent mortgage, whichever is less. 21 to 25% decline in revenue, $5,000 grant, or 2 times monthly rent or mortgage, whichever is less. It's the same strategy going forward. 26 to 30% decline, $7,500, 31% or greater, $10,000 or 2 times monthly rent or mortgage, whichever is less. So overall, that's the program criteria, is the amount of the grant. targeting those who've seen the greatest decline in revenue. We're grateful and thankful that the public came out this summer as a result of the council's pedestrian promenade and all the things that happened here in Frisco. Some of our businesses didn't see a decline greater than 15%. So this kind of a proposed program would target those who are still suffering significantly. So the criteria as laid out in the resolution, one, you would have to have operations severely limited by sales and service to the public or prohibited from sales of on-site consumption, food, beverages, sales, because of the public health order. So in other words, if you've been prohibited from sales or service because you're under construction or because of some other issue, you wouldn't meet criteria number one. You'd have to have a current valid town business license issued on or before a date set forth by council. In the spring program, we had the date of March 1st, and that date is council's discretion. If you want to pick up all those businesses that opened after March 1st, you could have a date of, say, October 1st or November 1st. But there's no comparison to the previous year. So I will come back to that, new businesses. The business must still be in operation of the date of the grant award. Sadly, a few businesses have closed. And so while they might meet the criteria, if they're not still in operation, then they obviously wouldn't be eligible for the grant. They must be the owner of a physical business located within the town of Frisco's jurisdictional boundaries, virtual and remotely operating businesses excluded. Since we wrote the resolution, a couple of clarifications have come up. So I'd like to propose changing this to be the owner of a physical business located within the town and within the town's commercially zoned areas, not residential areas. This comes from council's previous spring plan. Short-term rental property owners specifically excluded, but rental property management companies with a physical office to be included. So that would be an addition to the resolution currently in the packet. 5, they would not be a publicly traded corporation or be owned by, controlled by, or subsidiary of a publicly traded corporation, or be an entity that has more than $2.5 million in gross revenues, or being owned and controlled by a subsidiary of any such entity that has gross revenues of $2.5 million. Be able to demonstrate a decline in gross sales or revenue as noted in the table between January and November 30th as comparing 2020 and 2019. Some businesses don't have sales. It's more of a service oriented or different kind of, so they have clients or their gyms or their dance studios or things like that. So they would need to fill out a town approved affidavit, and other businesses, we may be requiring that affidavit as well. I know some council members have also suggested, or I've spoken to a few of you who said, well, what about those who we want to have a certain number of employees? That's council discretion. And should we have a deadline? If so, I would recommend the council pick a deadline of somewhere between now and the 30th for the first round of funding for December 30th. Specific reason for that, and that is that there are many stimulus packages that are eligible for reimbursement that could come up. We could potentially be eligible. So I want to at least make one opportunity for that. Also, this new round of stimulus funding might have additional reimbursement opportunities. So that's the overall business assistance program. Grant assistance, no specific criteria on where they use the funding. You'll note from the survey, most folks said, should they get a grant, it would go to rent, mortgage, and keeping the business afloat, paying employees, that kind of a thing. Also, what's included on today's agenda is a business innovation grant program. And this came from council's conversation about how do we support, encourage, reward, recognize, etc., those businesses that have taken significant costs because they've invested either in PPEs, or they've invested in the heaters, they've invested in a new kind of point of sale or anything that's touchless. And so this innovation grant program would provide up to an amount set by council. It's currently in the report as $5,000 for a business that's currently in operation, has a business license as a date set forth by council. I have in the report March 1st, but it could be any date. Not be a publicly traded corporation, not have more than $2.5 million in annual gross revenue, nor be owned by or controlled by a subsidiary of any such entity. And that's to target it to small business. And be able to demonstrate that they have expenses incurred for innovative or adaptive measures, implementing structural or technical improvements. There have been some questions about what that means, but it could be outdoor dining structures, air filtration systems, and no-touch features for customers, QR codes, although that's pretty free, improved technology and modifying business operations. And also, I would suggest we amend the resolution to include being owner of a physical business located in the town of Frisco, same as the business assistance program. Virtually or remoting operating businesses excluded, short-term permanent property owners excluded, but property management companies included. And again, it may be potentially a deadline. Overall, that's the two aspects of the program before you. The amount to fund the program is completely within council's discretion. My recommendation is about $500,000. I get that number from our spring program. That round of funding, we granted out about $505,000 to businesses in similar structure. We think about a third or so of our restaurants wouldn't qualify under the program. It is because they've done well through the summer. Most of the other restaurants would have some eligibility, and the retail similar. Some did well, some did not. And so overall, we think about $500,000 would get this out the door and into folks' hands, and probably most of those in greatest need, because the structure is set forth that those who obviously lost the greatest amount of income would see the greatest grant. One other thing I want to just comment for the council is just to take note, our staff has obviously been on top of a lot of things lately. We've been kicking a lot of things out the door fast. With the Christmas and New Year's week coming up, we don't anticipate this is going to be a 24-hour turnaround. Vanessa is already working on a new software system to collect grant applications that could be up as early as Wednesday. And we think we'll be able, it's all electronic. You will like that, a grant application that's all electronic. And they'll be able to upload the documents and do everything electronically. And then we can review it electronically. And we're going to be asking folks to turn in an ACH form so that they can get electronic deposits. So it's going to be a fairly smooth system, we think, but it was not going to be a 24-hour turnaround. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I hope to have crafted something that generally meets what the council was discussing, and we can, of course, amend it in any way the council likes. I have sent, just for the record, council an amended resolution of some of those things I mentioned in the report, and also we can amend on the fly here during the meeting, so we can also pull that up and get the language just right in case council has obviously amendments.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Any questions for Nancy at this time before we open up to public comment? Specific questions? All right, seeing no council questions, I will open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, you can do so now. Please unmute your mic, turn on your camera, or use the raise your hand feature in the participant list. And seeing none, I will close public comment and back to council discussion. I just want to say thank you, Nancy and staff and everyone else. This is the past few days have been a whirlwind of activity, and an amazing amount of work has already been done to help all of our businesses. But I think we're trying to figure out those who need more, or those who've been kind of caught in the cracks. So I'm hoping we can have a good discussion about what our intent is with this program and the goals each one of us has, and come up with a good plan to make this work. And I think the format and a lot of staff's suggestions as laid out in this memo are, I'm in full support, and I think will really help us address those who we've missed or haven't been able to have assistance yet. But happy to hear other council discussions and thoughts. Andy, how, and then Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Nancy, and everybody. And really, that's, I just want to say an outstanding effort on your behalf with the 5-star program and getting it up and going. And it's unbelievable. And, you will have saved businesses because of it. And, I just wanted to shout out to like Lauren Hitchell, who's on here, and and those, we're doing this because those that can't operate, such as the gyms and music halls and whatnot, really need our help. Other people are perfectly fine. Other people are just getting by. And so, this is a no-brainer, and I'm in full support. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Melissa?
I totally agree. You guys have just done an amazing job. And in terms of the program itself, I'm really impressed. I think that the tiered approach is very creative. I think that it will serve the gaps well. And, we can go from there. I also do like that it seems as though this is a comment, perhaps a question. You can confirm this for me, Nancy. That a business, so for the innovation grant, they don't have to really demonstrate hardship. Is that correct? I'm not seeing Nancy.
Yeah, no hardship.
Okay, no hardship. So really a business could apply for both. So if they're facing the hardship, they could have the assistance as well as if they've innovated. And so I really like that. I feel like they're complementary, sets us up for success in the months to come. And so really outstanding job. And let's see, as far as no employees, I think that I'm happy if it's a single owner sort of business. I think there are situations that we can't anticipate necessarily. So I would not include that. I would say, if it's one owner, then that's fine. And then the 500,000, boy, it seems like a lot, but we did go through that. It would seem that perhaps we wouldn't need to go all the way through it this time, but I'm okay with that amount. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. And Melissa, just to clarify, so I can keep tracking my notes, when you said the number of employees, kind of you're good with the kind of owner, manager, employee title, kind of that one person who works all three roles in a smaller business, let's say, if they meet the other criteria?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to clarify that, make sure.
Yep, thanks.
Keeping notes. I appreciate that. Other thoughts? Dan and then Rick.
Top of mind right now is I remember when we had this discussion back in April, I had a concern that by limiting Frisco businesses to those with actual brick and mortar establishments, that we were missing some of the smaller but not any less important operators in town. And I think we have an opportunity here to kind of reach out and let some of them identify themselves and participate in this program. So, I would offer that something as simple for number 4 to be, if you have a business located within the town of Frisco jurisdictional boundaries, and not necessarily should it have to be within commercially zoned areas, because there are service companies that operate in that realm, who provide just as important part of the part of the economy as businesses have the brick and mortars. And I think this is an opportunity to kind of reach out and help them too. They've been as affected. Let them demonstrate to what degree they have been, and let them participate in the program.
Mayor, may I ask a clarifying?
Please.
So do you mean sole proprietors that work out of their home is what you're referring to?
Would be, yeah, you could think of, people working out of the house or cleaners, or they might have a viable cottage industry out of their house. I don't want to qualify it unnecessarily. Cleaners, carpenters, other service industries, certainly there are other people, again, outside the brick and mortar world who have been adversely affected. So, people have been here for a long time. So, however, however you want to qualify it, I'd like them to be considered in this round. And I agree with the one for employee.
Dan, I know you don't want to call anybody out, but I don't actually understand what you're talking about. Meaning carpenters and cleaners, or who are the industries? What are the industries that have been negatively impacted that you're trying to help? I'm not understanding it.
Well, I would just say that there's a breadth of participants in our local economy that represent a broad spectrum of services, not all of whom, for whatever reason, participate in our economy through a brick and mortar outlet. They work out of their homes. Their vehicle is their primary business feature. Could be any number of service industries. Look around your house and look at repair people, craftsmen, cleaners.
Right, but they haven't been negatively impacted by the fact that people can't come to their product. I'm just trying to understand who we're talking about. Like a carpenter, those guys, I can't imagine there's a carpenter who needs assistance.
Yeah, and I'm not saying anyone did it or not. I would say give them an opportunity to demonstrate. I would just say not to exclude them just by virtue of the fact that you can't necessarily imagine, whatever distress they may or may not be in. You might end up capturing one or two or three or four more business people in town, and the others might not qualify. But it's a pretty simple metric, and the bar seems pretty simple. So, I would not necessarily say people were. I'm not going to sit here and enumerate the ones that may or may not have been. I would just give them an opportunity to participate and let them demonstrate.
And I think, Andrew, to your question, kind of, because I get nervous about the door that opens up and how many people can qualify under that. But I'm hoping kind of in that amended staff memo and the presentation is that they have to show they've been severely impacted by a specific part of the public health order to prove that. And I think some of those home businesses that I can think of off the top of my head would struggle to even meet that in some of those regards. But I do think I'm worried about that. And I don't disagree with you, Dan, but I just think that just becomes such an onerous task of everybody can quickly become their own small business in Frisco. And obviously we set parameters around business license, but
yeah,
curious
what
what
that
that.
have a business license. They'd have to have anybody who has a business license would have a product. Does it bring some more people into the fold? Probably. But it seems like, to me, it seems a fairly arbitrary constraint. When you have people who are impacted, you've had operations severely limited by having been prohibited in sales or service to the public. So, secondary and tertiary business owners who serve hotels or clean in restaurants or, work on products in your home. But their vehicle, again, is their primary source of revenue, and it's parked in their garage and they work out of their house. So roofers or other contractors, town of Frisco business license, they live in town. I don't know how many more people we could be talking about really, but they would have to demonstrate year over year that they've had a decrease in gross revenue, and they'd have to link it to COVID-related, rationale. Same way, I pitched this in April too, and I'm just saying I still feel strongly that we need to find a way to be more inclusive in that regard.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. I'm going to go to Rick, and that's Andrew. Is this on the same top? No. All right, Rick, and then I'll come back to you.
Hey guys. So mine is just a couple of a few details here. One is on the virtual business. My question there is, if a business pivoted from in-person to virtual, I presume they're not part of that discussion. And that statement is businesses that were already in existence doing, for instance, and I'm winging it here, consulting online worldwide, as opposed to say another, and I don't want to be too specific, another business who has, hey, I can't have folks come into my office, but I can meet you now online. Would they, so this is my question, and then I have more. Where does that lie, Nancy? I think you understand what I'm saying.
I do. So this is really helpful because if we understand council's intent, because you're coming up with a lot of nebulous sort of things we might need to analyze, so we're going to need to really know your intent. So based on your example, Councilor Lincoln, you're saying somebody who had a brick and mortar business essentially and then pivoted and went online, I would say, well, they probably don't meet item number 1. They have not been prohibited by public health orders from doing that. So they would not qualify. To Councilmember Fallon's point, somebody who is working out of their home but has not been prevented from sales or service to the public would not qualify. Someone who is, if the council chooses to allow those working out of their home, if somebody is working out of their home, but the business that you have has been completely curtailed by the public health order, then you would qualify. So they first have to get past item number 1, that the public health order specifically called them out, that they're unable to do what they did. So if they just converted to remote because of what you're suggesting, Rick, I couldn't see how they would qualify. But right now, as it's written, virtual and remote businesses were excluded as a business. I'm a virtual business and I do consulting worldwide. I don't even meet item number 1, let alone then I would be out in 3. I'm a business that pivoted to virtual and remote and I'm still working. It wouldn't meet. We're trying to target the meet to those greatest in need. Okay.
Perfect, thanks. I'm going to say this, point of clarity is all it was. So thank you. I just wanted to make that clear. And then I'm comfortable with the 500,000, but I'd like to see the 500,000 split between both programs. I would put forward 400 for one and 100 for the other. And then we see how it trickles down from there. If there's leftover funds, we roll that into whatever program is underfunded, if you will. It just keeps us at that number. And I just wanted to put that forward to the group. As far as businesses operating in Frisco or having a business license in Frisco, I'm okay if you have a business license in Frisco, and to the point of, if you were bold enough to open a business in the middle of a pandemic in our town, why wouldn't we support you? I don't think you opened your business with the secondary thought that if this doesn't go, the town's going to take care of me.
Okay.
Enough said there. That just so you guys know where I'm at on that. Number of employees, I'm good with 1. I think like everyone else, I think there's lots of good businesses out there that operate that way. And then I guess my last one would be on the innovation grant would be, I like the 5,000 for a start. And if there's funds left in that program and businesses can show that they had more outlay than that 5,000, why not give them an opportunity to come back for more funding? And that's what I got, team. Thanks. At the very end, I have one more item I'd like to hit with the team, but I won't hit it right now. Thanks.
All right, with the cliffhanger. Thanks, Rick. Go ahead, Andrew.
All right. Hey, first, I just want to take a second, and everybody's given a good shout out to the staff. But I also, and I've never said directly, we do know we have the press here, the level of enthusiasm that the staff took to serve our community. They are public servants and they served the public. There was a lot of back office work that was enthusiastically embraced that should be in some way brought to the public, of kind of just the, not just the effort, but the attitude of help. So if there's a way to see that in print, I would sure love to read about it. So on this one, In no particular order, my thoughts. We've got the controlled by language, and my concern is we have some franchisees in town that they are small franchisees. They're independent business people who, instead of opening up their own little shop, they decided to do it under the guise of a franchise. And so they're just as much small business people as, I'll say, Deli Belly. They're small business people. I don't know the owners of any of the franchisees, but we have the difference between the maybe here. I don't know the owners, but Subway, that might be his only Subway. Starbucks might be owned by Vail Resorts as a franchise. If they qualify as the small business that we're trying to help with the limitations on annual sales and all that, I'd like to give them the opportunity to be a part of it. So again, to me, small franchisees are people like Subway and what's the sandwich? Which. So I'd like to somewhere or another have language included that franchisees are included. I do like the distinction on the sales, the March 1st for subsidy and October 1st for the capital stuff. I'm not sure if this can be written in, but there's going to be just a mere sum of $900 billion floating around the country to help businesses. I'm happy to give what we're designing, but if these businesses have an opportunity to apply to the federal or the state programs for reimbursement of the same items, I'd like for them to be encouraged to do that, but reimburse us if they are able to secure the funding for the same thing from another source. Don't know how we write that in, but that's that. Kind of a question. Back, it was even before I was on council, you guys deferred sales tax payments. And I don't know, it's a question for the group. Do we want to tie the ability to receive, I call this stimulus, to receive funding on them being current in their sales tax payments? I think they should. I don't have a super strong opinion on it, but I think it is a topic that should be looked at. The innovation, Rick, to your point a little bit, my initial thought was it should be higher, but I understand our constraints. But what I would like to do, and I've talked to Nancy about it, is have our application include the actual amount that they could qualify for under the innovation. So if they spent $50,000 on innovative improvements, I'd like to see that on the application. We are currently limited at 5, but we can then go back and we all can collectively say, holy cow, we didn't know that you spent that much. Thank you, and we'd like to help some more. There was a clarification on the innovation that, and this might just be conversational to give staff the understanding that these are capital expenses, meaning the cost of cleaning your restaurant more often or the cost of whatever the operational costs are. That's not what we're talking about. I think we're really just focused on capital expenditures, not operational. And I just want to, while I've got the screen, Dan, I think it's a good point. I just don't fully understand it. Meaning I don't have anybody who has had a bad year, I don't think could qualify to come back and just say, my business was bad this year, so I won a grant. How it gets tied together, I'm not sure. So if we had more time, I probably could understand it better, but at this point, that's not an addition that I would include without understanding it better. Those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. That I know in the past the definition of franchisee has been a confusing one and how we go about that. Can you speak to that at all?
Sure. He's looking at subsection 5, the qualification of not being a publicly traded corporation, nor be owned by, controlled by, or a subsidiary of a publicly traded corporation. I would not take a franchise as being controlled by the corporate entity from which the franchise was obtained, not in the sense of it's used here. What is meant here is controlled by in the legal corporate sense, meaning they may not own it outright, but they have a controlling interest in the entity. So I don't see that as picking up franchisees as you've described.
Great, thank you for that.
Sure.
Sounds like what you said last time. I just needed to revisit it again. Little's happened since the last time we talked about that.
I hope it's close, at least.
We'll go to the tape. Jesse, Melissa? Jesse, go ahead.
Thanks. I just, echoing everything about what the effort that staff has put in over the last couple of days to get this 5-star program up and running. And I think we've gotten some pretty good press coverage on the Front Range about it, being the first community to kind of pilot it. So let's do a good job and not screw it up. But having said that, I think, I want to get on the record the fact that the commissioners really focused on restaurants, and they did so for a reason, but now's the time to look across all of the businesses and to be more equitable. And I think back in March when we were talking about business relief, we didn't really understand how disproportionately the public health orders were going to impact different types of businesses. And now we know. And so I think that, at tomorrow's Board of Health meeting, I believe they're going to be talking about expanding the 5-star business to other types of businesses. And I just really encourage them to look at some of the ones that have been, that continue to be challenged under this current public health order. So with that out of the way, I do really support the resolution as it's been written and slightly amended with Nancy's changes she mentioned in the memo. But I also really agree with Dan. I have come full circle on this and really want to, I've heard from a lot of businesses. The one that comes to mind, Andrew, is another example, is home performance contractors, people who do energy efficiency work. We have one in our neighborhood here. There's several that work here in Frisco, and I don't know whether or not they could prove the other criteria, but to Dan's point, I think that we should allow them to try. And I think we have other criteria established enough that could kind of weed out those folks that really this hasn't been a problem for. And I guess everything else, I'm struggling on the business date, the business license date, because we have heard from businesses that have opened more recently and they're beyond struggling. And yet to be able to look at that gross revenue year over year, I really think a full year of data is the most helpful. So I guess in the way that this is proposed, the latest March 1st for the business relief grant, and then October 1st for the innovation grant, I think is a good split down the middle. But I just don't know how many of those businesses open mid-year that we actually have. So I'd look to you guys for some more comments on that. And I think that's really about it. Nancy, you did a really good job analyzing the information that we have, the data that we have, some really interesting comments on the business survey that I just reread today. And I just want to thank the businesses who have already expressed the fact that they are doing well, and please give this aid to other businesses. I just can't, in times like this, I feel like everyone's kind of not necessarily in it for themselves, but they really have to look out for themselves. And for businesses to publicly express that, I think is really, really awesome and just a testament to our community. So I'm happy to help them in return and get this assistance out the door.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, Dan, go ahead, jump back in.
So a thought, and this goes to that duplicative process that Andrew sort of referenced in terms of by application to different grant programs. How can we reserve our money and continue to target to those most in need? And I would offer that we roll this out in two different tranches, and that we do the table A tranche first, get this out right away. And I know that our staff is working with restaurants to try and qualify for that second round of Colorado state funding that's going to be awarded towards the end of January. And then maybe we come back with that business innovation grant and see what's left in the pot. And we come back with that towards the end of January. We don't know how the landscape is going to shift, I think. And it gives us an opportunity, I think, to reserve that for a little while and see how we do coming out of the holidays, see if there's more of a shutdown, to see if the numbers go up, to see if we can keep them stable, and see what businesses can apply for state and federal programs, and at least have those awards announced. And then we can kind of work with the people who kind of filtered through those programs and are still left wanting. But just a thought that maybe we don't have to do it all at once right away. We're going to make, I hope, with the numbers that we're talking about in this first round, or what would be the first round, would have a pretty significant impact. And I think 30 days on the innovation grants, I think would not be problematic.
Thanks, Dan. Melissa?
Yeah, one thought on that is, could the business innovation grants be forthcoming? So does the money have to actually be spent to apply for it? And the reason I'm asking that is I really, as I've stated before, I really want to see businesses innovating. And so, perhaps it's a new technology, perhaps it's a new structural element for their restaurant or whatever, to help them get through the next couple months. And so I actually have a different perspective, Dan, in that I would like them to invest. And so if somebody's right on the edge of deciding whether or not to buy that, patio wrap or whatever, I would hope that this would encourage them and maybe push them over that edge. And the reason being, not only to survive this winter, but also they can use it into the future, and it makes their business better for the future. So I'm on the other side on that one, Dan. And I did want to add on the sort of virtual businesses, I don't really have a problem with it. I think that, as I said before, there are so many situations that we just can't quite anticipate. And I think all of the concerns about it are definitely very valid. None of us want anybody taking advantage of these funds, right? And so, but I think that there are enough other criteria that will filter out anybody that would try and do that, and hopefully nobody would try. But I feel like we're in a good place. I think there are a number of really creative businesses that could have been affected. We just don't really know. I mean, we don't have a full data set to really understand that. And so I would support not the physical brick and mortar in commercial boundaries, but broadening that a bit at this point. And I think that's all I have for now.
Just a second, Andy. Melissa, I'm sorry, my audio crackled a little bit. Can you say your last point again? I apologize.
No.
I just heard brick and mortar, but not before that for a second.
Okay, just saying that I support including virtually run businesses as long as they meet all of the other criteria. I think that all of the concerns that others have raised are valid, but given the other criteria, I think it puts us in a good position that it's fairly secure, and it'll be able to capture that. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 other businesses. We don't know, but I'm okay including that.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'll jump to you, Andy Held, and then I'll kind of summarize where we're at, because I think we're pretty darn close to good consensus. But go ahead, Andy.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree there, Melissa, on the innovation. It's wholly important. I agree with Dan on it's hard to put your finger on what a business is that doesn't have brick and mortar, but they still have a business license and they still operate as a business and they still pay their taxes. And my business is one of those. We don't need assistance, right? We happen to be in a good spot, but that doesn't mean that every business working out of the house that is a valid, legitimate business is not hurting from this. And some businesses may, right? So I think as the same as franchises, they should have the same ability to be able to check the boxes, right? If they can check those boxes and they're a valid business in our town, then they should be able to receive assistance. I think we shouldn't be looking for this money back if they get other assistance outside. It's all on top of trying to stay afloat at this point. We should also remember that this $500,000 was a grant on top of the money we already gave away. This was money we wrote off already. And so let's not feel bad about that. Let's give it right back to them, and that's okay. What was the other one? Was the Andy the $5,000 cap for potential improvements such as heaters and whatnot. I know will total well beyond $5,000 in some cases, and not that we have to pay for the entire thing, but I think $5,000 might not be able to meet the mark for those that have done such work. And I think that's it. Thank you. I think we're on the right track.
Thanks, Andy. I think you pretty well did my the summary that I was writing down and keeping track with, but it seems like we have consensus. Go ahead, Andrew, and then I'll jump back in. Yep.
So I just wanted to clarify from Andy. I'm not looking for if we give somebody 5,000 and they get 5,000 from somebody else. It's more if it was specific. The double dipping. If we give somebody a couple $1,000s for the mushroom heaters and then they go to the state and get reimbursed for the same mushroom heaters, that was it. If I encourage all the businesses to dip into every pocket possible to help themselves, but I just don't want to be the expense of double dipping. But I want to, I think
fair enough. That wasn't clarified. I appreciate that.
Nancy, were you trying to? Did you have a question?
I do, Mayor and Council. If you choose to include businesses working out of their home, so in other words, we would leave the resolution as written on paragraph 4 and not amend that. So it must have a physical business located within the town of Frisco jurisdictional boundaries. My question to you is if you, by your discussion, include businesses working out of home, the grant program tied the amount of the grant to rent or mortgage. So whatever the amount is in that category, or 2 times rent or monthly mortgage. So I just want to clarify, then you would be looking at the person's home mortgage as a indicator of what the amount of the grant is. That would be the foundation. I just want to clarify that's what we're talking about then.
Nancy, could you do something more related to sort of how they calculate, like I calculate my home office on my taxes? I mean, could you take so it's not like their entire mortgage? I don't think really that would be fair.
Yes, I would. That's perfect. We would just add a paragraph item, and we're typing on the fly, so we can do that. For businesses, there's a item shall not exceed the amount as in table below, except as identified and described for those home businesses. And we could write a paragraph that says, as they define it in their IRS tax filing.
So like their square footage or whatever.
Yeah, because I think you can choose how much you use, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as they define it, if it's 25%, as they defined it in their 2019 or 2020 filing, we could do that if that works. If that has any problem with that, I can type that.
I'm seeing, I think, emphatic head nods, at least Rick was. Jesse, were you nodding in agreement on that? Yep. Okay.
Then I had one more clarifying. Most of the council said they agree that we should add, must have at least have one employee currently employed, which may include the owner manager if the owner manager works as an employee. A couple council members I thought said take that paragraph out. That's something that we would add, and some wanted it in, so I just need clarification. typing.
It sounded like my notes showed that we had consensus on leaving that in, or
Leaving
having the one
One. At least it must have at least one.
owner,
employee.
manager, employee.
Okay.
Sorry, which would exclude, you're talking W-2s and not 1099s, correct?
I didn't specify. It doesn't, it could be the owner or manager. 1099, how they got paid didn't matter. They just have to be acting as. So for example, you own a studio and you teach classes, something. You own a business and you are actually working the business. So that'll be on staff to analyze. Okay. And then there was one, and council member who mentioned current on sales tax. So we need clarification on that.
Yeah, that was the, any thoughts around Andrew's, making sure that they've got all their current sales remittances in? How do people feel? How would that contradict our last? No, because everybody should have paid up the allowance we gave in the spring, right? We should all be a current on sales tax collection. Is that correct?
Yes, no.
Okay. How do people feel about needing that as a criteria?
And as somebody who raised it, I would ask, is this a solution looking for a problem? Does the issue exist to some of our businesses, or
Bonnie can weigh in on that. She's on the call, but I have not heard of anyone who is behind. But let's hear from Bonnie. If it's a problem, that's a good question. If you cap to council, of course.
Give Bonnie a second to the surprise calling to the floor. But otherwise, I think other than this, I see it seems like we have great consensus. So if somebody's ready for a motion after I hear from Bonnie, that would be fantastic. And then Rick has his final point. He wants to, maybe Rick, if you can make that while we're waiting for Bonnie, that would be great.
Yeah, sorry, gang. I didn't want to mix my discussions, but I actually had, I would put forth that two different things now that have come up is we have money still out there at the FERC and we've approved a second round. I would put forth through this discussion that we let folks apply to the FERC for rental assistance until the funding has been expended. And at that point, then entertain refunding that program, just so we don't have to keep coming back to it. And then number two, which just came up, is I think it's probably worth, since we're putting this forward, that'll be going on for a few weeks or months, that if you apply for assistance, that you don't have any public health order violations. Because that enforcement effort is going to become more prevalent than in the past, for lack of a better way to say it. I just wanted to put that out there for clarification going forward.
Thanks, Rick. I totally agree with the no public health order violations things. And I think the FERC money, I think since that's already allocated in I think that's a different conversation. Maybe since it wasn't agendized, or I don't think it's specific to this program. I think it's already there, if I'm correct. I think we can leave that. And then maybe in January, we can get an update on how much funding is left there and what to do with it, if that's what you're suggesting. Is that kind of what I heard? Or Nancy, do you want to clarify if I'm confused?
No, I think that's what he was suggesting.
Okay.
We'll give you a report. We don't have a request for additional funding.
Yep.
So I wanted to let you know that our finance director, Bonnie, does not have any audio, and she indicates that we just have a couple of businesses that are delinquent on sales tax. So if you wanted to add must be current on sales tax, it would apply for a couple of businesses.
So,
And also, Mayor and Council, maybe for the record, I can share my screen, Mayor, if it's up to you, obviously, but to go over the conditions for the record, so the public, so you guys know what you're voting on.
that would be,
That's what you want to do.
or a potential motion, which hopefully is coming.
Yes. Would you like me to summarize where we are?
Yeah, that'd be great, please.
Okay. Could you just give me 1 second to add one more? Okay.
Since we didn't really discuss the sales tax, I would support that. I mean, I do in a way think a couple businesses, we could look the other way, but in the same respect, everyone else is kind of playing by the rules. And so I think that is a reasonable criteria to include.
Yeah, I agree.
And Hunter, I just wanted to clarify, are you going to do public comment tonight?
I did open up public comment after the presentation.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't know if there's more, but anyways, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, let me,
Okay.
yeah. And Nancy, are you looking on sharing your screen?
No,
Nancy,
not,
I just have another, Nancy, as you're working that, if you can address clarifying question. At one point, I thought there was, I like actually the idea of sort of having the innovation be a little later, but I thought there was a reason that we want to have it be by the end of the year in order to secure reimbursement from the feds. So if you could just address that reality, because I think it's a good idea but it has penalties.
it may, Mayor and Council, we were successful at securing a grant out of via the CARES Act funding, stimulus funding. We think there's going to be another round because they still have additional funding, which is coming out of the state funds. But those funds, if we apply, must be allocated and spent by December 31st of this year. And so, yes, it's possible penalty. On the other hand, that isn't why we're trying to get this program going. So it isn't, I understand council's goal. I just wanted to drop that in your ear. Also, with the new stimulus funding coming out, there will probably be other opportunities. So while it's not been your concern about getting reimbursed, we were successful at getting funding, and only a few towns were able to. So anything we spend by the end of the year, that's what we want to try to capture. Okay. I think this answers it. We will, pardon if I share my screen, pardon if any little clumsy sentences, we will clean them up, typing on the fly. So if you're ready, Mayor. Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so this is the resolution as I am working on it as you're speaking. So there be some things we'll clean up, but let me know if I haven't done something and I want to get a clarification on STRs, which you didn't really talk about. So 500,000, I'm not sure you really clarified that, but that's what I have heard. So no grant to any single business shall exceed the amount on grant A below. I need to fix this. With the exception for businesses working out of their home as explained in paragraph 10. I need to say something different, not the exception of businesses, but for businesses working out of their home, rent and mortgage as defined, but we'll fix that. But it will be, the rent and mortgage will be as defined in paragraph 10. Dad may want to put that somewhere else. I left the date of March 1st. Please correct me as we go if that's wrong. Still be in operation as date of the grant.
That's probably the spot to insert the sales tax requirement. Have a current valid town business license issued on or before March 1, 2020, and be current in sales tax remittances to the town.
All right, so then still be in operation, be the owner of a physical business located within the town's jurisdictional boundaries, took out virtual and remotely operating businesses. This part you didn't discuss, but this was discussed in the spring. So we need clarification if, should you bring a motion, that it would be short-term rental property owners specifically excluded, short-term rental property management companies included with a physical business located within the town of Frisco.
I think that wasn't discussed because I think we're all in agreement with the way that was written. I saw head nods across the screen for that.
Also, just a quick point on that. If you are removing the language on prohibiting the virtual and remotely operating businesses, we probably ought also remove the word physical in the first sentence. So it's be the owner of a business located within the town of Frisco jurisdictional boundaries, semicolon, short-term rental property owners, etc.
Okay, got it. We didn't make any changes to the paragraph on gross revenue.
I don't think so.
Somebody say something?
Nope.
Be able to demonstrate a decline as identified on the chart. Must have at least one employee currently employed, which may include the owner manager if the owner manager works in the business as an employee. Submit a town approved application for the first round of funding. Should any funds remain available, submit a town application on or before January 31. Just trying to draw an end date here. You can change that. If working out of,
Can I interrupt?
absolutely better.
On the gross revenue, one little bit of input that I received is, should that go through December 15th or longer? Because obviously the last couple weeks have also created more hardship for some of these businesses.
That's absolutely council discretion. I picked January through the end of November because businesses tend to have monthly sales, and 2 weeks, even though it's been significant, and trying to draw an end date, was trying to pick a month end. We collect all their data by month. We would not be able to compare their data to December of last year in a 2-week increment. So that was the reason. Council can choose that, but we would not be able to compare the December income. So it's up to council. The last paragraph here, which I think the numbers might have got messed up. If working out of the home, the term mortgage or rent will be as calculated as specified by the grantee on their IRS filing for 2019-20.
Or maybe on a pro rata basis,
Okay,
and then just back into the sentence.
is that good?
I just
You can fix it.
like,
then.
I think we have agreement on all those issues. I just want to touch back to Melissa's question and kind of see where, if council had thoughts or anybody else had heard that, or on picking end of November as a date, or if given the 2 weeks into December, since those are normally ramping up holiday sales that some people, or business, excuse me, that some people might not be having.
I think also, if the business can prove it and they've got the data to carry that, I think we should give them the opportunity. And if they don't, then so be it. But I think at this point, to cut 2 weeks off the calendar is not necessary.
I can't see all the cameras. If anybody want to add that to the motion, or people good with the date as is? If you speak up, if you can, I can only see a handful.
I'm good with the date as is.
I like the date as is.
Yeah, I'd like to keep it at the 30th.
There we go. Rick, Andy Held, how are you guys feeling? Date as is? See that from Andy Held? Okay, so I think, so it seems like we have consensus to keep the date as is, but thank you for bringing that up, Melissa, and I understand the point, definitely.
Can I just add one more thing to that?
Please.
And that is, and this is the public comment that, I'm sorry, I got my order mixed up, and there's one person that would like to include this, and so I'm going to make the pitch on her behalf, and that is that it could change somebody's category from their hardship. So it could change them from the 15 to 20 to whatever. So I'm just going to put that out there, and 2 weeks could make a big difference for a business, just simply by changing that date. So I hate to just give up so easily, guys.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate
But
it.
but I respect everybody's opinion, but it could make a big difference.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I
Go ahead.
could probably offer a compromise that would allow for monthly accounting and still move people's numbers up, and that's simply to move January and February out of it. So the percentage declined from March to November. Imagine everybody had about the same January they ever did in February.
As a point of note, if the council wanted to do that, we brought you some data back in the last meeting, I believe. Restaurants were down overall 10% between January to whatever, I think we were doing the end of October, March to October, 6% when we looked at it the whole year. So it does change. That's true.
Does that suggestion, Andy Aronson, go ahead.
I mean, I don't see the difference whether it's January. Every change we make is going to affect some businesses for the better and some for the worse. But if I understand correctly, you're looking at a mid-December evaluation date, and I don't know of any business that does. It has to me, it has to be at the end of a month, which is typical accounting practices of how your month has gone. I don't know who we're talking about as far as an affected person, but to me, the date that's there is probably the fairest, and it reflects the situation best. So I'd just like to keep it. And again, I want to reiterate, Melissa, I don't know who we're talking about. That would be the one business that must have had either a terrible December, early December. So I'm not sure how that impacts everybody else.
Yeah, I don't want to, I'm not here to represent specific businesses, but again, if changing it in a document, a date is not, if somebody wants to prove that and show the data to prove it, I don't see why we wouldn't offer that if it would actually make a substantive difference in them being able to apply for this grant. And so if they saw that the last 3 weeks they've taken a hard hit and they want to prove that, I don't see why we wouldn't change one date in a document. I don't really see the rationale. I mean, again, we're getting into how people account for their own businesses. And I think everybody has their own systems. And so if they want to prove it, then I don't know why we wouldn't encourage them to.
I think the hard part is it gives staff one extra thing to try to figure out. We don't have comparables. And I think, again, whichever way we move it, we could be benefiting some for the detriment of others. And I think it sounds like the council was kind of agreeing that as written was the best start to be the most fair. So
I would also, just from the sense of fairness, Hunter, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, please.
By the 20th of December last year, there were only 2 weekends. And the 20th of December this year, we will have had 3 weekends. So it's those types of factors that all of a sudden we're throwing apples and oranges to make it complicated. And I'm a big proponent of simple.
Nancy, did you want to review what you have written on the screen so we can see for a potential motion?
Yes. Okay. So that's the Business Assistance Program. The Business Innovation Grant. We discussed $500,000 in total for both. One council member mentioned 400 for the business assistance, 100 for this to split it up. So we need some clarification whether you want to direct us to split it up or keep it as 500,000 in total for both grants. And right now, this particular grant is at $5,000. Must have a current license changed to October 1st. Must be in operation as the date of the award. Didn't change anything on a publicly traded corporation. Got clarification on franchises. This one added the paragraph about must be a physical owner of a physical business, because these are physical things that they spent money on. So, and if you want to go back to these being, so this is for commercially zoned businesses. We need clarification. Short-term rentals would not qualify, but short-term rental companies would qualify with the business here in town. This isn't, we're not going to leave this note in here, but I just was typing a note when Councilmember Aronson mentioned cleaning and operational expenses excluded. I can just make a note right here. So that's extra staffing or, like you said, cleaning and things like that. Must have an application, but that was the only real changes there. So here I have the 500,000 and for the total amount. So This is now the resolution for you to consider as read into the record here now. So if you make a motion, you would want to talk about those amendments as read, and also the amount of money, 500, 400, 100, what have you, that still needs to be settled. Okay, that's.
Great. Thank you for your ability to work on the fly. I know Rick put out there and I'm sorry, Rick, missed it in my notes, Rick, but the splitting the money into two little pots. Do council want to continue that way? Rick, I'll let you take it.
Let me just say I missed that part. So I'm good with 500,000 for both programs. I misinterpreted that, so I'm done. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
Great. And Andrew, and then Jesse.
Just clarification question. We're only giving away 500,000, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not sure, Thad, I'm going to leave this to you, but I'm not sure it's clear in the resolution that it's a total for item 1 and 2, a total of 500,000 as opposed to 500,000 each.
I agree. It needs some clarification.
Yeah, but you can make that in your motion.
I do agree, Andrew. I think that was all of our understanding and intent was 500,000 max at this point. Jesse.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 1, resolution of the town of Frisco, Colorado, reestablishing economic relief programs, directing the immediate implementation of the programs in response to COVID-19 public health emergency, and authorizing the expenditure of funds for the programs as laid out in the amendments that was read into the record by Town Manager Nancy Carey.
Thank you. Is there moved by Councilmember Burley? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Inkin. Any further discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Burley,
Yes.
Fallon,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Inkin,
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. The motion carried. Moving on to second agenda item. It's agenda item number 2. This is a memorandum of understanding between the Summit County Board of Health, the Board of County Commissioners of Summit County, Colorado, and the town of Frisco regarding the 5-star program. I'll open up the public hearing at this time. Turn it over to staff and Nancy.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this agreement I already signed under the emergency ordinance. Council passed it earlier this spring. That was to get the 5-star program up and going. It was very quickly moving. However, we thought it best to put it on the agenda so that council could ratify the agreement. And while I have the floor for a minute, I also want to join council. Huge shout out to our staff who came together on the fly, and everyone on this call, I can see their names, that is staff member. And I know I wrote some notes of this to council, but many of the staff are like, it was like, being in a game in the 4th quarter and you're like wiped out. You think you can't do another game. That's it. You're just done. And you're like, who's going to go in? It's a mess out there. We need the snow is born. And they're like, put me in, put me in. They were excited to help out, and they were excited to join the opportunity to help businesses. We've had such a hard year and so many things that the businesses have been through. So huge shout out to our team, and the team in the county and everybody who came together. It was a great effort. People jumped in for the opportunity to go to businesses and help them get open. And we're on standby right now doing the same thing. So thank you to all the staff. I've said that to them a bunch of times all weekend, but I wish you could have seen the joy and the excitement and the interest they had at finding a way to keep the public safe and help businesses get open, both those things. And they're really doing a great job. They're not, as we said to the businesses last week, this is not going to be a pass. You are going to have to meet these, and not every business has, and some are still not open. But aside that, the goal was to try to find a way to help you open and help businesses help themselves. So great team effort on the part of everyone in the county, and really our team with the joy and enthusiasm they had. Yes, I agree. Great job. So I'm just looking for your ratification of this agreement that's been implemented. I thought it was important that you see the agreement.
Thank you. So just to be clear, you just need, you would like a motion just to ratify the agreement?
Ratify the agreement. Mhm.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Any specific questions before I open up to public comment? Great. Seeing no, excuse me, council questions, I'll open it up for public comment at this time. Anyone wishing to make a public comment around the 5-star program and the MOU with the county? You can unmute yourself or raise your hand in the participant list. All right, seeing no public comment at this time, I'll close public comment and back to council discussion and perhaps a motion of ratification. I just want to reiterate what was also said by Councilmember Burley earlier. I think the 5-star program for the restaurants is the first step, I hope, and my sincere goal. I think I know I will be reaching out to the county commissioners on personally tomorrow to encourage them to expand this to all businesses who have been greatly affected by occupancy or their ability to do what they do with people coming in their doors to serve our community. I think the businesses who are left hurting the most right now, who aren't covered, are those who truly help define that sense of community outside of the people who have already helped. So I hope we can get 5-star accreditation for all of our businesses who have been affected, because I think they've been unfairly called out. But we're working towards that. But this is a great first step with the restaurants, and I hope it's just one step of many to get everybody back up and running. If there's no other further comments, a motion for ratification would be great.
With no discussion, then, Mr. Mayor.
If nobody has anything else to say or jump in. Andy Held, go ahead.
Real quick, sorry, Jesse, Mayor Pro Tem, I don't mean to step on your toes there, but I would just like to say that the 5-star program is a great way to be able to support the businesses that have been towing the line. You know, we've heard from other businesses that, you know, what am I supposed to do? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and other businesses aren't. And this is a good way to say, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you can reopen. And so, again, bravo. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Jesse, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 2, the MOU between the Summit County Board of Health and the Board of County Commissioners, Summit County, Colorado, and the town of Frisco regarding the Colorado 5-star program.
And moved by Councilmember Burley. Mayor Pro Tem Burley, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Held. Any further discussion? You call the question, please.
Certainly. Fallon,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Inkin,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Burley.
Yes.
Thank you.
No further agenda items. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Move to adjourn by Council Pro Tem Burley. Happy holidays, everyone. Staff, town, thank you so much for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it. Sincerely, take some time over the holidays to be with your loved ones, whichever way that might be. Be safe, everyone. Can't wait to see you in the new year. Thanks.
I can't wait for a new year too.
Yeah, Happy New
holidays,
Year.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.